Welcome to this video. We will be talking about ArrayList. We have seen arrays and now we're talking about something called ArrayList. What are really the differences between array and ArrayList? Why are we making it different? Here are the main differences. First one, when you create an array, it becomes challenging to increase the size of the array. So you started with 5 elements, you want to make it 7. It's not that easy. You need to create a new array, copy the old one to it, and things like that. But in the array list, it's easy. There's a method called .add. You just call that method and add the value that you want to add between brackets, and we'll see. You can add it to the end of the array list, or you can add it to a specific location or index, and we will see examples. The second difference, removing an element from array, primitive array, is challenging because you can't do that just straightforward. You need to create a new array and do for loop and copy every element except the element that you don't want. So it's complicated. You can maybe set the value to 0, but you still have a location in the memory used for that element, regardless of the data you have in the place. So removing elements from array is not simple. But in ArrayList, as you expect, there is a method called .remove. And you decide which element you want to remove. Where is that element? Second, third, fourth, you know the index of that element. Then you can remove it just using .remove. The last one, array has a limited methods and properties. There are only few. You saw sort and length, not that many. But in the array list, the list is big of methods and properties. And you can just find it by saying ArrayList dot, and then it will come all of it on the screen. Now, how we can declare an array list? Let's take this example. Let's declare an array list of data type double and give it the value x, or the identifier x, or variable name x. So x will be array list of type double. Just let's go back and remember what we did with the normal array which we had. So in our array we used to do that, say double, square bracket open closed, and then a variable equal new, and double again, and then we specify how many elements we need. So we're here creating 5 elements. But in ArrayList, we don't need to specify the number of items. We start by an empty one, and then we can add elements as we need or remove elements as we need. And here is how we declare it. It will be declared different. You start by ArrayList, and you have to use exactly the same spelling because this is the class name. So ArrayList, then you need to decide the data type. So this ArrayList will be of type double. You notice how we declare data type? We put less than, and then the word double, and greater than at the end. And the D is uppercase, not lowercase. That's how it is. You ask why? That has to be like that. Then space your variable or identifier equal new, and then again array list. And then you have less than, greater than. You can put in between those less than, greater than, double, but that's option. It's not needed in this case. And then open, close bracket. Remember, this is the normal open, close brackets, and then semicolon. So this is the line that we need. So just to help you remember it, array list, then the data type you need with less than, greater than, and the first letter is uppercase, then your variable equal new, and then again array list, then less than, greater than, closing, opening and closing bracket, and that's it. So now we have an array list called X, and it's created in the computer memory and ready for us to use. Now, instead of double, you could have used integer. Notice we did not use int. We use integer with I uppercase. And then you could have used float, or could have used string, or could have used an object of whatever object it is. And you study later object-oriented programming, you will see how you will be using object with array list and different data type. Okay, so now we have X in the memory, and we want to start adding elements to that X. So we want to add. So we have these values, we want to add it to that array list. It's very easy. X dot add. We already said that. And in between, you pass the data you wanted to add to the data list, or to the array list. So we're adding now 45.6. Same thing for the second element and the third element. So these 3 lines can do that. Of course, we can use a for loop and ask the user to enter the data, and every time the user enters the data, we push it inside the array list, and we can continue until the user enters 0 or minus or whatever. That we can do, and which we did in the past, similar concept. But the important one to know is the method .add that accept the data. Remember here, our array list is of a type double. So if by mistake you enter here without dot and no an integer value, you just enter 45, it will not work because it's expecting you to pass double value. And that's something you need to remember. Okay, let's come here. And we know those array lists is similar to array. They are location in the memory, and they have index starting from 0 and going up, and they have values. So now assume we have this array list right there, and we want to display the values stored in the second element. So what is the index of second element? The index of second element is 1. So now if we do this, will it work? This is what we used to do in the array. It will not work because array list does not support this type of notation or syntax. In the array list, if you want to get a value from an array list, you need to use a method, which we spoke about it, called get. So you need to say x.get. And get what? You need to specify the index. So we need to get the second element, which has the index is 1. So x.get 1 is what we need. And see here we have a normal bracket, not square bracket. Of course, if you want to display it on the screen, you can add system.out.println, and this way it's a full line that will display the element for you. Now, we know the value now, but we need to get the index. In the previous example, which we saw, we know the index. We want to get the value at index 1. Okay, but here we know the value, but we don't know what is the index of that value, where it is located in my array list. Is it first, second, third? And how I can do that is another method called index of. So you specify the value and it will get you the index. So x.index of, and what is the value I'm looking for is 209.55. So I want to get its index. What is the index of this value? Of course, there may be another value in my array list has the same exactly value. It will get me the first one that I have. Now, system out.println and everything, this will display for you the whole thing. And here you will get 2 because it is the third element and its index is 2. Okay, so index of. And remember the O is upper case. Okay, so adding an element at a particular index. Now I have three elements here. I need to add one as the second one, so it will come between these two. I want it to come here in between the two. How I can do that? Again, we have to add, and add here will require two things. Will require the index I want to add the value to, and it will require the value that I'm adding. So we'll pass the index. I want to add it to the second place, which one? Because the first place is 0. And I want to add the value, which I want to add 25.30. And then that's it. So I'm adding index and value. So you want to specify a specific index, you need to provide that one. And you do that, it will push the other elements to other locations and add the one you wanted to add into the right place. So that will go into second element, second will be third, third will be fourth. And that's how it will work. So this way, using add and providing index and value, we can add an element to specific location or index. Very good. We're making good progress. Now, how we can remove an element from a particular index? So I want to remove the second element from this array. Again, as we said, x.remove, and we need to specify the index. So removing it from the second index, which has from the second location, which had the index of 1. Okay, and that will do what you want. Now, if you want to delete everything in that array, you could have used x.clear, open bracket, close bracket, and that will delete all the elements in your array list, and your array list will stay, but it will stay empty. Okay, how we can find the size of our array? Remember, in the array list I'm talking here, in the array that we used before, we used to use length. Length is a property that does not have open and close bracket at the end, give you the length of your array. In array list, length doesn't work. There is something called size. So x.size, and size here is a method, so it needs those two brackets. So this x.size will get you how many elements you'll have. And here we have 3 elements, isn't it? So that's, and we add to it system out.println, and we will get 3 of that one. So size with open square and close bracket is a method that get you the length of your array list or the size of your array list. Okay, now let's use the for loop. We used the loop before with the array, and let's see, it's the same thing here. So we have an array list called x, and we want to use the for loop with it. So we say for int I equals 0 until I less than x dot size. This is will give us the length of our array, and then the open and close bracket, normal bracket is important. You cannot use square bracket, but you need these 2 brackets. Then incrementing the array by 1. And then you just use get and provide I, which will change from 0 to the number. So that's one way to do it. This is not the only way. And we will see there is a different way, something called for each. Let's look at the for each. For each is the for loop, but more simplified. You don't need a counter to say I equals 0, then no. It will go through the list one by one. For every one element in that list, it will display the result for you. This is why they call it for each, because it goes through the list one by one, and for each element in that list, it will do some processing. So this is how we write it. We can say for double. Why is using double? because the data type of our elements that are in the data in the array list are double. So for double instead of int we used in the past. Now for each y and x, y here will be the first time it will be 5.6, second time it will be 5.75, and third time will be 209.55. It will continue through the elements. So this value of y changing for y, and x is our whole data, a whole array list. So for every element in that array list, we will do some processing. Y is the element and x is the whole array list. So that's it. So this is a little bit different, yeah? So for double y and x, then what you do? Here is what you do. You display just y. Notice we don't need get, we don't need anything, because we're dealing with the element one by one. Y is the actual value in that location, first location, and then y later will be the actual value in the second location. So this way it goes through the list one by one. So for double y and x, or you can read it, for each y in x, do the following. So for each y in x, print y. So first time you print y 45.6, and then you continue. The same for each loop can be used with the normal array that we used before, the primitive array, and I'll show you an example here. So we have a string array which has those data. We can apply the same thing, and this array we call it students. So for each student and students, for each student and students, do the following. Print student. See, always what you do here is the same as this, not this. So you cannot say print students, because you're talking about each element. So for each element in this array, do something. So for each student and students, display student, and this will get you the same thing. Now let's look at some code issues that we might face, or some mistakes we might make when we're working with ArrayList. Looking at this code, what do you think the issue with this code? What error do you see in this code? Pause the video for a few seconds or a minute and look at it. In terms of syntax, I see no error. This is the correct way of declaring ArrayList. Exactly, we have the bracket here, we have all the things are there. Here, this is exactly the same way we used add, and we just adding items to the end of the array. For each seems to be fine. This is x2, or whatever variable I use here is still fine. I can say y or x2 or x. It's correct. There's no issue here. Yeah. And printing x2, yes, I'm printing x2. So what's the issue with this one? Syntax, it seems to be fine. The issue is again back to the data type. Remember when we created this array here, we created with elements of type double. So x is double. Every element in x is double. So those items are double. But here we're adding an integer value. Will not work, because this method add is expecting now from us to pass double, because x of double. So this is the issue here. Either you add 0.5, 0.6, 0.0, 0.0 here, or you make this one integer, and then that way it will work. So the issue is with the data type. Data type is very important. So that's where it is. So the issue is here that we have an array list of type double, and we're passing to the add method an integer, which will cause a problem. Okay, what error do you see in this code? Now look at this code again. It's another code which looks similar with the for loop, yeah? So what you see here, the first one seemed to be fine. Now we added 0.5, 0.6, okay, and because it's double, but still there are an error. The error should be somewhere here. Where do you see the error? Remember, we said get is a method that requires a normal bracket, not a square bracket. So you should replace this one with a normal bracket. It's not a square bracket. It's a method, and the method use a normal bracket, not a square bracket. So that's the issue you have. Thank you for listening. I hope you find the video useful. I know I'm going very slow, but I think with that speed maybe can help you think while I'm explaining, and that get you maybe connected to the material that we're discussing. Thank you for listening.